There's a phenomena in gaming I like to call the hab. It happens when you've got a setup like this. You know that you have to go this way to continue the main objective, but there's this little voice in your ear that says, check the other way, just in case. And right as you're about to ignore that voice and just continue, you go to take a step, indecision hits you, and then hallway ankle breaker. And this happens to me so stupidly much when I game. It's like there's this little monkey in a diaper sitting on my shoulder that won't let me ignore that pile of boxes holding a healing item that I've probably already got 40 of. If there's a suspicious nook on the map, I've got to check it. If there's a crate, I must break it, or at least see if I can break it. If there might be a chest or ammo around this corner, I have to find out. And what nags me the most about this is how grating it feels when it happens to me during like a chase scene or when narratively I should be in a rush, but of course...
Stay the fuck!
Casey! Is that you?
Anderson?
Hold your fire! I'm coming in!
Right after I check and see what's in here. The hab to me speaks to a much larger issue in gaming, a perfectionistic tendency, that fear that a great many of us have of missing content. And it's one of the unique challenges that games face. If you read a book, there aren't really optional pages in the middle of the story, you just read in turn. In a movie, you're presented with everything the director intended for you to see, same with any TV show. Games are the form of storytelling that struggles the most with distracting you from its own story, simply because there is often a utility in going off the beaten path. And don't get me wrong, a lot of games are made to keep you endlessly distracted. Open world games bombard you with things to do that are only tangentially related to the plot. Most of the time when you exit a shrine in Zelda, the camera is perfectly lined up with something else to grab your interest. Towers tag your map with more errands to run. Other genres like Metroidvanias get around this by making exploration extremely necessary because of all the dead ends and by having stories that feel less pressing. But even when the story is not an issue, there is a pressure I think many of us feel when it comes to not wanting to miss anything or playing perfectly. And I don't just mean folks that go for platinums or 100% runs. I mean the fear of getting a bad ending because you skipped something, or not wanting to get locked out of certain missions or weapons or armor because you progressed too far in the story, or simply feeling like the game is dragging because you can't allow yourself to play suboptimally. And that's what I want to discuss with you today. I've got some psych research, some silly examples, and maybe, just maybe, a way for you to relieve some of that fear of missing out and perfectionism so that you can play without needing an ice pack. So if you don't mind, let's hear a quick word from today's sponsor, then we'll start the show. Have you ever been interested in coding, even a little bit? Back-end web development, Python, Go, programming, are those words you've ever heard in a classroom or punched into a Google search before? If so, I think you need to know about Boot.Dev. This platform uses modern game design tactics to help push ambitious students toward their goal, a career in back-end development. A career, by the way, that according to Stack Overflow in the US last year, netted a median salary of over $100,000. Which is well more than you make as a YouTuber. If you have the drive to become a back-end developer, this is the platform for you. You'll learn back-end development from start to finish in the Python and Go programming languages, and you'll do this a lot. It's designed to actually get you writing a ton of code because, as I understand it, getting your hands dirty and shipping projects is the only way to truly learn. What I think makes it special is that the folks at Boot.Dev want to ensure that you're never bored. It's designed like an RPG game to keep you engrossed in the learning process. You'll earn XP, levels, achievements, and complete quests, all while competing for a top spot on the global leaderboard. Imagine actually developing a marketable skill while you game instead of just doing it for funsies or for writing essays about them. Seriously, what the hell am I doing? So click the link in the description and use my code DarylTalksGames to get 25% off your first payment for Boot.Dev. That's 25% off your first month or your first year, depending on the subscription you choose. I'm gonna try it, and if I'm a natural, you may never see my ass again. A massive thanks to Boot.Dev for the sponsor. Now back to the show. When I consider the art of the hab, I think it really started for me personally back in 2010. I picked up Dead Space on a whim, my first real experience with survival horror. It had this little light room that you could just check at any time that would direct you to where you needed to go. And as time went on and I realized just how important ammo and health packs and weapon upgrades were in this genre, I started to check this rope to find out where not to go. I'd find myself with my path forward split, see what was the right way, and then go the other way because I knew more nodes and credits and such were going to be the rewards for my bravery. Dead Space low-key cured my fear of the dark because of this. But it also created a habit that I haven't broken to this day, this need to check every nook and cranny around me first instead of just going the right direction. The game conditioned me to leave no stone unturned, and I think this has happened to a great many seasoned gamers, even if it wasn't with Dead Space. Maybe it was Persona 4 where you got stuck with the bad ending because you didn't spend enough time with this fucker and his incredibly busy schedule. Yeah, you're real busy standing out here smoking a cigarette in front of the 7-Eleven. Maybe you've seen side quests interact with one another or affect the main narrative, and that's your blueprint for all future side quests in all future games you play. Can't miss those. Maybe you've been locked out of missions and items before because you advanced the story, and that scarred you so badly that you have to take to Reddit before you can keep going in what you're playing now. Maybe you 100%ed a game once, and now you truly can't go back to just playing them half-assed. Whatever your experience is, this might be the issue, that video games have taught us that just kind of moving on might come back to bite you. You don't want to be underprepared, feel like you need to save scum, or wonder what you missed out on by just being ready to progress already. But at the same time, so many of us struggle to finish games these days, and slowing your pace down to a halt to play it optimally doesn't help that. And when you pair this with the cognitive load of leaving things unfinished, it makes moving forward when you actually want to finish the game that much harder. I've talked to you about the Zeigarnik effect on this channel a great many times now. I owe this lady so much ad revenue. But one thing I haven't really explained is why the Zeigarnik effect works. If this is your first time here, Bluma Zeigarnik once ran a study where she gave kids puzzles and interrupted half of them before they were finished and sent them all home. The kids that were interrupted remembered way more about their puzzle later than those who finished, the implication being unfinished tasks stay with us. Completed ones fade away peacefully. So ignoring the monkey on your shoulder and not smashing those boxes just makes him even more unhinged. He doesn't let you forget it. And the reason this works like this, according to psychiatrist Roma Kumar, is because of short-term memory. In an interview with the Harvard Business Review, she says that once our brain receives information, it stores it in the sensory memory for a very brief time until it moves to the short-term memory. Many of these short-term memories are forgotten fairly quickly, but when a task isn't complete, our brains constantly rehearse it to keep the information active. Kind of like you would do a phone number when you're looking for a pen. That is what creates the underlying cognitive tension. Once we complete the task, the information is easily forgotten. That little bean on your shoulder is actually your short-term memory refusing to just forget that you might need that material you just passed, which creates this mental load. Until you resolve it, your short-term memory will be subtly replaying that moment over and over, calculating how long it would take to turn around, considering why you might need to go do it, contemplating the potential ramifications of not going back and saving the time that you'd waste later if you had what was there all along. Okay, fine. Damn, I'll go see what it is. Copy and paste this sensation to any side quest, any dialogue option you've ever save scummed to check, anything you've ever decided to skip in a game, and I think you know exactly what I mean. And as someone with occasional perfectionistic tendencies, I personally feel a small pang of this every time I come across a locked door or cabinet or chest, because as soon as I see it, I can't unsee it. It becomes a loose end that weighs me down. I know closing loops can be distracting, but story aside, I still struggle with the mental stack of trying not to forget I need to go back and unlock that at some point unless I already missed the key somewhere. Fuck! My brain struggles with Metroidvanias because of this. I love them as a genre. Silksong will be a day one for me when it finally drops the same day my grandkids drop me off at the nursing home, but I do really have to be in the right frame of mind to play them. They're full of locked doors, blocked passageways, routes that are barred behind an ability I've yet to find. It's a delightful feeling to go back and finally close those loops, but this internal dissonance that is created when you are either forced or force yourself to leave something behind you is what is really under the hood of the hab. The weight of carrying unfulfilled exploration often outweighs the inconvenience of going to check it real quick, but we're still left with the frustration of not being able to tell ourselves no. So, what do we do about this? Is there a solution for us as gamers to not be so neurotic about checking everything? What can games do to keep that from happening to us? And in a word, I think the solution for both parties here is trust. Let me show you what I mean. The first 2 hours of Tears of the Kingdom were agonizing for me personally because of my fear of missing content. I was kicked out here, told to go here, and then I proceeded to wander around and interact with things that weren't ready to be interacted with yet. I couldn't make heads or tails of these rails, I was clearly missing a way to move the blocks here, and I didn't even know these were shrines yet, they hadn't been activated. This is a prime example of a time when I should have just listened to the game and followed that little blue rope. If I had done that first, then the shrines would have all been ready for me. I would have had access to the tools that interact with this place in the opening hours of the game would have been delightful. So the solution here becomes a two-way street. 1, I could have just done what the game said and headed right to the temple. Or 2, the game could have just put me out here instead of here. It could have opened with me meeting Rauru and activating all the shrines. Then I couldn't have wasted 2 hours trying to optimize my time with the game. And this is what I mean by trust being the answer. I could have trusted that Zelda wasn't going to lock me out of all this area once I progressed the story. I could have trusted that it was okay not to fully explore the map before I went here, but so many games have taught me that it isn't okay. Games haven't built that trust with me, so I feel like all of my obsessive preparation is necessary, which can be exhausting. Now that being said, a lot of games do a really great job of being clear about this sort of thing. Hey, you won't be able to come back here for a while. Are you sure you want to continue? Hey, we're gonna paint these boxes and rock holes yellow and piss everyone off, but at least you'll know what you can and can't break and won't waste time doing this. At least you know this particular rock formation isn't a loose end you have to close. Hey, you decided to go off the beaten path. Here's a room bursting at the seams with goodies and not one single common item at the end of a long hallway. Ladies and gentlemen, did you miss out on your platinum? I present to you the chapter select screen. It's beautiful, I know, it's absolutely stunning. Yes, absolutely. Wait, don't lick it. What are you doing? So as far as games earning our trust that we will, 1, be rewarded for going off the beaten path, and 2, not be punished for not going off the beaten path, I think games these days are only improving and making it easier to not stress about missing anything. Obviously, some exceptions apply and maybe don't set you up for success. For the record, I still think Tears of the Kingdom is fantastic. I'm just incredible at ruining things for myself, but games these days are doing their best to keep me from doing that. That said, this whole trust thing is a two-way street, so how can we learn to trust games? How do we let go of the fear of missing content? We've talked a lot about how some older games might have conditioned us to play them a certain way, but what we haven't explored is our inability to just ignore these impulses. Sure, we know why they're there, but why can some of us ignore them where others can't? My guess is that a lot of this obsessive double-checking is rooted in what psychologists call maladaptive perfectionism, which in this context I think manifests in the desire to not necessarily play the game to have a good time, but to avoid having a bad time. Refusing to play in any fashion that is imperfect because it could lead to a disappointing experience. And while real-world perfectionism is something that does cause a lot of people very real issues, and if you genuinely struggle with it, don't be afraid to seek professional advice, I do think some of these strategies for combating it can be applied here. One common thread I keep finding in all of my research on perfectionism is this cognitive behavioral therapy technique of challenging those all or nothing thoughts. Your assumptions that you must play this optimally, or that you'll somehow have less fun if you don't unlock that legendary weapon or leave a side quest unfinished. Sure, it'll be an unclosed loop, but is it really going to undo all of the fun you've had up to this point? When you've finished this game and have uninstalled it, will you really still be thinking about that treasure room you never unlocked? Or will it simply be trivial since the ending blew you away? That big plot twist is what you really remember. That boss fight was hype as hell, and none of that treasure can come with you into the real world. It was all a means to an end after all, and you still beat the game, you still had fun. There was evidence supporting that from the last 20 games you've played. Maybe watching that other ending on YouTube is okay. Maybe you don't have to check everything before you head to that objective marker. Maybe it's okay to miss parts of the game. Another strategy is setting realistic goals, or purposely doing something wrong and not going for a 100% effort. It's setting a limit before you dive into a game. This will do a couple of things. It'll keep you on track, help you explore what it feels like to just do what you feel like, and perhaps give you more evidence that sometimes just beating a game is enough. Good enough is good enough. I know a lot of you watch Dr. K over on Healthy Gamer GG, and even he echoes this strategy.
So if you really want to overcome perfectionism, there are a couple things you have to do. The first is to focus on your actions instead of the outcomes. How much time am I willing to devote? And I'm going to devote that, and that's going to be like enough, right? So it's to really focus on the action instead of the outcome. Because the last thing that you'll remember for people who are perfectionistic is they get so caught up on the outcome that they can never get started.
If you haven't seen his videos, you really should. They're extremely helpful if you struggle with stuff like this outside of video games. But yeah, maybe you decide ahead of time that this is not going to be your 100% run, but instead this is going to be your do what actually sounds fun run. If a quest doesn't appeal to you because it has a minigame that makes picking mushrooms as stressful as taking the bar exam,
Your Honor, I object!
skip it. If getting a particular set of armor feels like more of a time commitment than you're willing to give, you don't have to explain yourself, just move on. Missing content should never paralyze you into a game feeling like a chore, especially since leaving certain stones unturned adds crazy replay value when you decide to play it again down the line. Apparently, I missed an entire dungeon in Tears of the Kingdom. Initially, it bothered me when I found out after I rolled credits, but I was able to combat those feelings with the realization that I still unmistakably had a tremendous time with the game, and the knowledge that in 2 or 3 years when I go back to replay it, there is so much more to discover. And these strategies are sort of how I've healed from the butterfly effect of Dead Space's light rope. I try as best I can to just go with the flow when I play. I accept that missing stuff is a natural part of the journey. Mistakes and oversights should happen. The decisions I make should have consequences. And I've said it before, but I refuse to optimize the fun out of my time anymore. Halves still happen, I'm sure they always will, but the monkey on my shoulder is much less of an asshole now. I named him Cecil. He even showed up in a video once. All that to say, I hope that if you're like me and you struggle with content FOMO or have been burned by games communicating poorly in the past, that you heal from that. And that you've discovered how a walkthrough can prevent a lot of headaches. And if you struggle with perfectionism in any form during your time on this planet, that you consider applying some of these strategies. Sometimes, squeezing the most out of life means letting go of the outcomes and the illusion of control you have over them, and instead focusing on what's realistic, allowing your efforts to just be enough. Noticing what is right in front of you, loving who is right in front of you, especially if that person is in the mirror. So rest your ankles, go make friends with your diaper monkey, and go half-ass something. Hello, dearest friend. Thank you for watching this video today. If you like this and want to see more videos like it, that lovely subscribe button will make sure you stay up to date on everything I make. And if you just love this and can't get enough, my Patreon page is the place for you. For $1 a month, you'll get weekly bonus content like creative input, bloopers, thumbnail previews, editing live streams, etc., etc., link in the description. You might even get a shout out like this month's featured patrons. Dempsey K. Tapley, Rifter, Snake, Paul Wright, Neon Puma, Dakudo, LTNX9, and Osiek RC. Thanks again for watching. Like, share, subscribe, comment to your perfectionistic tendencies down below, and as always, please have yourself a damn good one.
Get up, boy! Up. Oh my...